All right, Aaron, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to have you here, man. You're a bit of a celebrity online, it seems.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
I guess I have to tell everybody how I found you because it's, you're part of my new wave of guests, so to speak, which is like the For You page on Twitter for me has just become franchise and restaurant folks, like across the board. And I'm not sure what's going on with the algorithm, but it's certainly helpful. But your content, like over and over and over again, is just like coming into my feed. And I was like, I've got to get this guy on this podcast. Like, I've got to know what's going on over there.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. That's great.
Yeah. Tell your marketing person. Yes. How do we attribute this? But what I always like to do is have my guests speak for themselves about who they are, what they do, and how they got to where they are today. I'd love to hear your story about how you got to where you are today, Aaron.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been in the franchise industry for years. Actually started in the film and television industry on the business side, where I was working with actors and writers and directors. Did that for about 5 years. Worked at some talent agencies, and then realized that I didn't want anything that my bosses had, and I didn't really like a lot of the people I was working with. So I was like, I should probably switch industries. So I called a buddy of mine, and he was like, you should get into franchise development. And I was like, what's franchise development? I, like many people who are outside the franchise industry, hear a franchise and they think McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or, those types of legacy fast food. But he told me about this whole space of like home service businesses that you can get in for relatively inexpensive comparatively to a McDonald's or something like that, and actually build wealth. Yeah. So I started working for the largest carpet cleaning company in the world, a company called ChemDry. And so I jumped from Hollywood to carpet cleaning, which is pretty hilarious. But I so helped build that company, portfolio of brands, purchased that. Yeah. They said, hey, we want to scale to a multi-brand platform of service brands, and we want you guys to come in and run our division to do that. Awesome. We'll deploy capital, and you guys grow it. And so they bought a drywall repair brand in COVID.
Yep.
There were 100 locations sold, 40 franchisees. Only a handful of them were, operating and being successful. And so we did basically a complete overhaul of the brand, built systems around training, recruiting, marketing, scaling the business, ongoing coaching programs, lead generation. And the first franchisee that we launched, after all those systems were put in place, he was cash flowing his first month, had a full-time skilled laborer hired, and he had leads on the calendar the week he got back. So I felt we were prepared to grow that company at that point. So I added 223 locations to that brand in 2 years.
That's awesome.
Thank you. What's even more awesome is they all opened and they all had full-time labor hired prior to going to training, and we turned leads on for them at training. So we were basically taking people from a white-collar background, plugging them into a blue-collar business that they knew nothing about, and giving them the chance to be successful really quickly. So that's when I started really kind of like getting involved in the franchise community. I'd be asked to be on panels at different conferences and stuff like that. Yeah. I wasn't even like thinking influencer at that time. Like, it didn't even cross my mind, but they wanted me to share about how we were doing, what we were doing, and why we were doing it, and all that stuff. Because as you know, that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
Started speaking at different conferences, gave my first keynote speech for the International Franchise Association's Conference for Emerging Franchisors at the end of last year. I talk a lot about responsible franchising because I believe there's an opportunity to highlight the good in franchising versus a lot of what people see as the bad. And I think that there's a better way to do it. And then basically we grew the portfolio of brands that I was at. We grew them from 3 brands to 12. And so in 2022, the company that I was working for was like, hey, Aaron, love what you did with this drywall repair brand. We want to buy a business at the end of the year and give it to you, basically. You can turn it into a franchise. It's not a franchise yet. We'll double your salary, give you an unlimited budget, and we'll give you a really fancy title.
Not a bad deal.
Wait a minute. I can do this on my own. I can build a team. I can raise capital. I can find a business that I believe in. I could make that business become the biggest brand in the industry in that vertical, whichever one I decide. So turned it down, looked at 24 different businesses. I resonate a lot with like the ETA space on Twitter, because that's essentially what I did. I found a business. I was looking for a business that was a good core business that I could turn into a franchise. So I joke, but I didn't do ETA. I did FTA, which is franchise through acquisition. So I partnered with founders of a 34-year-old pressure washing business. I acquired the franchise rights to the business in January of last year. We started franchising in February. I talk a lot about this because I think it's important. We've turned away 57 people who had the capital and weren't right for our system, which is over $10 million in revenue. I talk about that because a lot of people in the franchise space, they'll just take a check from anyone. And that's, in my mind, how you get kind of to the collapse of one of the ways you would get to a collapse of a system is you just have people that aren't successful, or they aren't the right fit or whatever. We've been very selective and brought in like really high level operators. So we've signed up 51 franchisees who have purchased 187 territories in that's 26 amazing. States. And that was since March of last year.
So, I mean, it's actually unbelievable. I mean, I'm going to read out some data, folks, here from Aaron's own Twitter account, which says 97 locations. This is a tweet from 2 days ago. 97 locations this year plus 90 awarded last year puts you at 187 locations, 51 franchisees in 26 states. You've turned away 57 buyers with in and around 160 locations who had the capital or were not the right fit, as you said, over 10 million in revenue, as in you declined that revenue opportunity. Like, that's unbelievable. And it's such a fascinating, there's so many fascinating elements to what you're talking about. So I'm going to break down some of the things. So you're talking about the ETA. So, and you call it franchised. What did ETA stand for? Just so like
entrepreneurship through acquisition.
Entrepreneurship through acquisition. Okay. What I find fascinating about that is, I mean, I see that online quite a lot now as like a sort of like TikTok real secular trend, which is like people like to your point, like you're in power washing now. People do like landscaping, lawn mowing, that kind of stuff. Like people setting up like those kind of business, buying up like older businesses that are not necessarily going to ever scale their own business, even though they're probably ridiculously cash flow positive, even though they're probably unit economics are probably through the roof. And so like scaling them and kind of tying them all together into one sort of larger sort of thing is amazing. I actually have friends of mine who do that, but like do like sort of medical pharmacies and that kind of stuff. They do it that way. But it's amazing. And what fascinates me is that like you've been able to like hit a type of scale, like honestly, that is kind of mesmerizing. I mean, I sound like I'm fanboying you right now, but like, I mean, you know, when I hear franchising from, you know, our clients, or when I see it online, you know, I'm reading online, like we're talking about like restaurants, like Dave's Hot Chicken, like probably the hottest company, probably the hottest franchise opportunity in the country for restaurants. And it's like hit 200 locations, you know, and it's like, wow. And I mean, like you're able to turn around like so many locations so quickly. Like, tell me, like, when you looked at like power washing, like what were the things you looked at to kind of go, boom, I'm going all in on this bad boy?
Yeah. So there were a few things. So I recommend anyone who's looking either buy a business, buy a franchise, entrepreneurship through acquisition, start a business, like you have to have a checklist of things that you're looking for in a business. And so I did that before looking. And so I could look at each opportunity that I analyzed through the lens of how many boxes does it check?
Yeah.
And also what on this list is a non-negotiable, like what's a need to have.
Yeah.
And then what are kind of the nice to haves. And that really helped me look at things, you know, more or less objectively. And so the kind of need to haves was high margins. I'm not interested in any kind of food concepts. You're operating a, you know, best case scenario, 15% margin, more regularly like 11 to 12.
Yeah.
And I was looking for 25 to 30% or higher. So all residential and commercial services. I wanted something that had unskilled labor, you know, a massive total addressable market.
Yeah.
So a lot of customers that are both residential and commercial, recession resistance. So something that was necessary regardless of what was going on.
Yeah.
Or it had either withstood the test of time in the past, or I believed had the ability to withstand the test of time in the future. And then just something that's scalable, quickly and easily scalable for franchisees. Because the more scalable it is for franchisees, the better it is for a franchise system to grow.
Yeah.
Because the easier it is for franchisees to reinvest in growing the business, then we can all just scale faster. So those were things that were like need to haves. There were two nice to haves that I couldn't find anywhere else other than Rolling Suds. And so there were two things. One, people talk a lot about like a moat, like what's your moat, what's different, right? And if you have a moat, it's great. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. You can just have a better experience to the customer. But we basically have a proprietary way that we power wash.
Okay.
We can do a 3,000 square foot house in 20 to 25 minutes. Start to finish, tear down everything, and it's a more effective clean than the guy who's there for 3.5 hours doing it.
Yeah. Did you come across the technology to do that, or is like that? Is that a mixture of process, operation, and
it's process and equipment? So like you can't buy the equipment we have anywhere. We make the trucks ourselves. We have big box trucks that carry 1,000 gallons of liquid. It's a pretty heavy duty like tank, and so we're built for like massive commercial jobs.
Yeah. So like sites and stuff. Yeah. That's
like
awesome.
like 135-foot water towers. 10-story buildings, 5-story like apartment complexes. Like we're doing bigger stuff. And so, we can also power wash 5 stories from the ground. We don't have to get up on ladders. So all of this allows our franchisees to make more money per hour.
Yeah.
And grow, a big enterprise on a per truck basis. And obviously, like I'm just going to give the most extreme example of having a product that disrupts an industry. It's the iPhone. Back in the 2007, we had the Motorola BlackBerry, or the Motorola Razr. We had the BlackBerry, and we had that was it. That was the most advanced the technology was. And then the iPhone came out, and they built a multi-trillion-dollar company, and every single cell phone provider has been trying to keep up with them since then.
Yeah.
And the second thing that was a nice to have that not a need to have was little to no competition in the franchise space. So a fragmented industry, my belief is the more fragmented the industry is, the easier it is to disrupt with the right kind of professionalism. And so every brand I looked at had like 5 to 10 other franchise brands that were doing the same thing with a different logo. And when I looked at power washing, that didn't exist. There wasn't a national leader. There wasn't even a regional leader.
And so go on.
So I saw an opportunity to basically become the first professionalized operator in the industry. And so we're doing, you've probably seen me tweet about this, we're doing what 1-800 Got Junk did, the junk business in the
I love that.
early 2000s to the power washing industry right now. It's the same thing.
It's honestly mesmerizing. It's mind blowing, just the scale, the speed to scale, and like tell me about when you met like the owners of the business of Rolling Suds, like did they understand like from the get go what you were trying to do, or was it like there a bit of corralling, like in the sense you're like I'm gonna make the 1-800 Junk, boom, and they're like what, like how is that?
So I mean, we met in September of 2022. We finalized the deal in January of 23. So we had only known each other for 3.5 months, right? And so I was the best option out of all of the companies they had talked to.
Oh, I see.
Based upon like our values, they knew I was going to honor their family name.
Yeah.
They're everything. You know what I mean? It's a 34-year-old business. They've built their family and their entire life on it. And like, for me, I take that really seriously. And there was a lot of other brands that were pursuing them, or like, portfolio brands, but like they did not get the same kind of warm and fuzzy feeling. But I think like, no matter what I say during those 3 months, like we don't know exactly how it's going to go. And I knew that as long as I've done what I've done in the past, we'll get to scale pretty quickly. But I mean, I didn't even know how fast it would grow. Like I thought I predicted 32 licenses year one last year. We did 90.
I was like, geez, you got to go back to that financial model, man.
Yeah. I had to change my 10-year plan a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. But like, tell me, what do you think like brought in that type of demand? Like, were you kind of crafting a sort of online narrative for yourself? Like, was there like marketing before the marketing, so to speak?
Well, kind of, yeah. So like once I started participating on a thought leadership level at different franchise conferences, like our franchise industry is pretty small. Like everyone, I don't want to say everyone knows each other, but like everyone who's doing stuff knows each other, if that makes sense. Like everyone who's really kind of like making waves. And so I've become somewhat of a thought leader in that space.
Yep.
And so a lot of the franchise consultants that I've worked with over the years know that if they present a franchisee with a brand I'm associated with, those franchisees are going to have the best chance of success out of the other 700 brands they can present.
Yeah.
They know me personally. We're Facebook friends. They know my kids' names. Like, it's like, so I had that prior to.
Yeah.
We had that leg up that a lot of franchisors just simply don't have because they have a cool painting concept or a cool epoxy coatings concept or a cool HVAC concept, and then they decide to franchise. So I came in with franchising background to kind of put fuel behind the growth. So we have that. But I do believe that the business model itself would sell itself on its own without me even being there, because we have a very like big like right place, right time element right now. The product market fit for what we're doing versus what's available in the market is unlike anything that I think you can find anywhere else. Like there are other franchises that have momentum, but there's a lot of other concepts doing the same thing.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It was interesting because I was just going to say, like, it sounds like you just had like the product market fit. Like there are always going to be competitors no matter what. Like in any business you do, that's, I guess, the blessing of capitalism. But at the same time, I mean, like you had kind of coalesced all of these different sort of elements to kind of give you such a value proposition that for most people in the states you operate in, it's like a no-brainer to work with you.
Right.
You know, like you kind of consolidated it and turned it into a brand. And I mean, like, my God, I mean, just the numbers are just insane. And I'm like the world's your oyster almost, because I think there was a different tweet that said that you've got so many more lined up for next year, or did somebody tweet you and you replied 300 locations by the end of the year and 100 trucks in the road? Thank you, is what you said.
Yeah. I've been known for calling my shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we'll be over 200 locations by next month. And then, we're doing between 15 to 30 per month. And then we're training and putting more franchisees on the road monthly than the franchisees that are buying the franchise. So we're opening them and we're selling them at a similar rate.
Yeah.
But I have, over 20 team members. I have a full-blown executive team. I'm building a C-suite. Like I'm building this as if it's a very sophisticated franchisor that has, decades of being in business and knowing what needs to happen now as we open location, so that we can have systems in place for a 300, 400 unit network now.
That's awesome. And I think like, I love hearing that, like putting the groundwork in and like designing the process. You hear like the London Tube system was built for an audience in 2020, not 1800. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like building for scale. And like, that goes back to kind of like what you talk about when you mentioned earlier about responsible franchising, and being a great business for your franchisees, basically, to like be a partner of. I had a great guest on recently, and he was the director of franchise development at Angry Chicks in Los Angeles, like 29. I'm butchering the number. I think it was like 29 locations, and they're growing Nashville style chicken. Again, I'm not even sure if it's Nashville, so I'm not even sure why I said that, but it's a hot chicken sandwich, tenders, and all that kind of stuff. Great guy. And his big thing is also responsible franchising. And I have definitely seen a trend towards that online as well. Like a lot of people are talking about this, and like, it's quite passionate for you as well. So like, why is responsible franchising even in your mind as you like scale? You know, like what's the need for it to even be a thing for you?
Right. So I started tweeting about responsible franchising probably about the same time I launched Rolling Suds, maybe a little bit before that. You know, I've been directly or indirectly involved now with 14 brands.
Yeah.
Okay. And I have seen in just holistically in the industry, and some people won't like to hear this, but I've seen franchising done the wrong way more than I've seen it done the right way.
Hot take.
I have.
Yeah, but that's fair. I mean, objectively.
I have. I mean, like, and a lot of franchisors don't want to say that. A lot of franchise professionals don't want to say that because it's almost like it might push people away from the industry. But I believe that saying that and then highlighting what is wrong and what the issues are will actually open it up so that more people can come to the industry versus just like not calling it out and then allowing it to stay the same.
Yeah.
And so like you know, I've been involved with brands where, you know, before we got involved, like there were franchisees forming unions. They were told they could run the business fully absentee by hiring a manager that they're going to pay $60,000 a year to build them a $10 million business, but they needed double the amount of equipment than they bought, like just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And it honestly, like it drove me crazy. And there was a period of time where I almost left the franchise industry because
like disillusioned.
Yeah, I've been involved with brands where there was, you know, no business coaches and there were like lots of franchisees or there was one business coach. And it's like, my thought is, and I tweeted about this, like a franchisor is a service company. We provide we provide services to franchisees, and in return for the services, we're paid a royalty. And as their business grows, they're going to need different services. And so it's our job to continue to innovate the level of service we provide to help them continue to scale their business. And that to me is like, I don't know, first principles thinking, like that's what a franchise is. At its core. So for me, it's about, okay, Rolling Suds is meant to be an example for what I think a franchisor should do to scale a franchise system at what we're doing, at the rate we're doing it. But like, it's so much bigger for me now. Like I'm going to build franchise brands for the rest of my life. Like that's all I'm going to do is build franchise companies that hopefully impact change within the franchise industry. And like, since I started tweeting about it, I approached the IFA. I said, these are the issues as I see them. I proposed 4 core tenets of responsible franchising at a keynote speech that I gave at the end of last year. And at the IFA conference where there was 4,000 people there, the CEO of the IFA stood on stage and said, state of the franchise industry, responsible franchising. Here are the tenets. This is what we're doing now. And then this is wild. The editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine reached out to me directly and was like, hey, Aaron, this is Jason from Entrepreneur Magazine. I'm like, yeah, I know who you are. And he's like, we want to write, we've heard about this thing called responsible franchising. We think it's somewhere between a conversation and a movement within the franchise industry. And we'd like to have someone write a 3,000 word piece for the magazine.
Like it to college you go.
We'd like it to be you. And we're going to pair you up with a professional writer.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa.
Thank God.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, thank God. So we'll have that piece. We finished it. Him and I worked on it. He said there's never been a piece that's gone in his entire year of career of journalism that's gone through more scrutiny than that one. Because there was different layers. There was fact checking. There were opinions. There were like, and I'm just telling my story and kind of telling the industry as I see it. And so anyways, it'll come out. Responsible franchising hits the newsstands in 2 weeks when the
hello. Okay, let's hype that. Okay, well, I will definitely go get that. I mean, I don't even know where to buy a magazine anymore, but I guess I will go find one, but I will find it online. But like, it's amazing. And like, I definitely would say like, man, this is your moment to become a TikTok star now if you're not already, you know, in the sense like make that kind of content, green screen content around it. Because like, I mean, the fact that we're in 2024 and we're talking about something like responsible franchising as if like, the industry hasn't been through so much over the last few years, from like innovation and technology to COVID, that like we have to have a conversation about it, because there are so many poorly run franchise companies, you know, that are impacting the lives of people who want to make a living becoming a franchisee. And it's amazing to me that I'm actually very excited for this, because I think like, you know, I think certain things like need sea changes, you know, and I think the fact that the phrase the journalist called it a conversation or a movement, and he wasn't quite sure. That's exactly how I've been thinking about it when it's been mentioned to me. I'm like, is this becoming like a thing, or is this just guys telling me things? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, but it's like, no, I've heard it from so many people now, and like, you know, it's like a hashtag.
it's like a total thing. Yeah. I mean, it's become a real serious thing, and I feel grateful to be part of it. I'm actually going to lead the first academic discussion at a university on Wednesday about it,
nice.
Which is wild. So like they reached out to me and they're like, hey, we want to teach the next generation of franchise professionals how to franchise responsibly. Can you come lead this discussion? So I'm flying to Palm Beach tomorrow to lead the discussion on Friday or on Wednesday. And then they asked me to be part of their advisory board so I can create a subcommittee of the advisory board to purely about responsible franchising. So I feel grateful that I'm able to be part of it, because I mean, it's absolutely 100% necessary. And if you think about it, like, let's go real macro for a second. When someone finds the right brand, I don't believe there's a quicker way to wealth generation. Like, think about the people who bought into like Orange Theory Fitness. They've probably got like 7-8 studios that are each spitting out like $3 to $4 million a year. They're good. They're good. Yeah. Like, they don't ever have to work again in their life if they don't want to. And so like, if you just think about those different brands and the impact that has on a person. Yeah. When that brand is run properly. So if you zoom out even farther and you say, if we run the franchise industry better. Yeah. How much can the franchise industry and the difference in a bunch of positive brands?
You mean like the caliber of people that it would attract to the industry, better people in the industry? Yeah, no, totally. I mean, it's the perception. I mean, that's the thing. Responsible franchising is really like fixing or solving or improving the perception of being involved in the franchise business in and of itself, whether it's power washing, whether it's convenience stores, whether it's like restaurants, you know what I mean? Like, there's money to be made. Right. And like, totally. I mean, obviously I speak to a lot of restaurants on this, for example, and I've had some amazing franchisees that own like 60, 100, you know, Burger Kings or Taco Bells, which I like, there's so many, you know what I mean? And like, I mean, obviously they're incredibly successful, and I mean, like, running that like number of like restaurants, whichever, but like, to your point, I think like they themselves fall into the responsible sort of franchisee inside of this, you know, and trying to scale these. And it's like amazing people. And it's like, to your point, it's like improving that perception to show it, like, because even before I started doing this, I mean, obviously before I started doing this podcast, but before I joined Landed, like, I mean, my background wasn't in hospitality at all. Like, as in, I tell people, like, I mean, I feel like a quasi therapist now doing this podcast, because I have people come on and tell me about challenges in their business. And I'm like hearing about like so many different things about running a type of people business, you know, like I've background in software and tech, like San Francisco. It's like, if there were no people, those businesses would be happy. You know what I mean? It's like the opposite. Whereas I hear like amazing stories, and I'm meeting amazing people. And I think it's amazing for you to be like really running like on this sort of like with this banner, so to speak, of like responsible franchising, because to your point, to the point of the journalist asking you the question, is it a chat, or is it a conversation, or is it a movement? I mean, my perception of it is very much like it is becoming a very big movement within franchising. I see it everywhere. I read it online. I see it. I mean, my entire online presence is consumed by franchising and restaurants. Now, but that's the topic. Right. And I think it's pretty amazing that you're kind of leading that front, and I'm super excited, and we'll absolutely share your article for sure. I mean,
awesome. Thank you. That'd be great.
There for you. But it leads me to the next question, which was something I was going to ask you. I'm still getting used to using a mic, by the way, because I leaned back and I'm back in now. Which is like, you know, you've built a huge social media presence for yourself. Like, I mean, Now, I guess like the algorithm's very biased for me, but I'm getting your content from everywhere. Like every algorithm is sending you my way, and like, God, we're here. This is fate. Not the algorithm, it's fate. And I think about that like in the sense that like, you know, I've had some amazing people on the podcast recently that are kind of, I would say, quasi social media influencers within sort of hospitality space. Sean Chef down in San Diego, amazing guy. If you haven't come across him online, he does California Barbecue Media, which is basically smartphone storytelling for like your restaurant or your business, and like, you know, really leaning into social media. Like people are looking up your restaurant online, so why are you not there? Like, I mean, obviously, but like, you know what I mean. And then another guy, Paul Tran, on last week, and Paul very much.
Yeah,
I know
like, Paul.
Yeah. So I had Paul on, absolute legend, and I mean, leaning into social media. And one of the things we spoke about, and I'm like, I'm delighted that you're here because I really want your point of view on this as well, and I think people need to hear this. I was saying to Paul, I was like, you know, tell me about the material impact your social media is doing. Like, what deals is it bringing for you? Is it bringing in deals? And as a marketer, you know, first of all, I hate attribution. It's like honestly the scourge of my life, and it's the scourge of every marketer's life. It's like, oh, why do anything if you can only measure clicks, you know? And like, I think about this a lot because you've developed a social media presence for yourself, and I mean, you've scaled this business. So like, do you want to tell me like a bit about like the impact like social media has had on your career, and on particular on you know, Rolling Suds over the last like 2 years since you've been involved?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I would say I started leaning into Twitter pretty heavily at the end of last year. And I think we've like our following's been multiplied by like 8 since then.
Yeah.
8 times. Started posting on Twitter, or excuse me, on LinkedIn last year. So, well, the year before, but really started talking about responsible franchising and kind of franchising a business last year, just because that's where I find the franchise industry is most active, is on LinkedIn. And so that's kind of been like my niche. However, Twitter is where I've found almost all of the franchisees who have become Rolling Suds franchisees.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I bloody love that.
Wild. And so there are, you know, people in on Twitter who are respected in the franchise space, like, you know, Brian Beers and, you know, The Wolf and JT Singh and, you know, some of these guys who I've known over the years due to the reputation I've had in the franchise space and what they do in the franchise space, and us having similar kind of circles. And the minute I launched this brand, they knew the same thing that the other consultants that I work with in the franchise industry know, which is I'm going to do everything in my power to support franchisees, even if it means losing money. And so they were able to kind of publicize that. And also the model is great. Like, we're heavy commercial business. Like, there's a product market fit for power washing and becoming a professionalized player. But this year we've decided to double, triple, and quadruple down on content. And I've personally learned that that there's not a higher leverage thing that I can do than create content. And because it feeds into everything that I'm
speaking my language.
It feeds into everything. I mean, my franchisees get to hear from me more. The people who are coming in, because I can't call 50 franchisees every single week. All I would be doing would be on the phone with franchisees. That's why I have a team that supports them. Yeah. So, but can I create a piece of content that can impact them and their business? If I talk about how to, you know, do a sales element, or how to, you know, whatever it is, like I can use that. And I have franchisees that'll send me a tweet that I wrote and be like, this is why I joined. Like, this thing that you just wrote, this is how I'm going to run my business. Like, this is why I joined. Like, that happens. I get employees and team members from the content I put out, which I'm not paying headhunter fees. I'm getting better quality employees because they align with the vision. And I'm getting other business opportunities, whether it be investments or other things. Like it all feeds into each other.
Yeah,
And,
no, absolutely, man. I mean,
so
like,
I can't stress it enough.
totally. I mean, and I love like so much. I mean, there's not so much to unpack there, but there's so much like richness there. Like when I think about it, like I always like to talk to people about like content in the sense that's like dipping your toe. And it's like, you know, that you've seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You know, that, I mean, it sucked, but like it was the last one of that era. And you know, like they have to take the leap of faith to get the Holy Grail. And he throws the dust out and you can see the invisible path and he takes the step. I always feel like that's what I tell people is like social media or like getting into like content marketing, that like your first video is probably going to suck, and your first tweet or your first like blog post or whatever it is you're doing, put out there. But like, it's like a muscle and hitting the gym. The more reps you put in, the more in shape you're going to get, the more you're going to learn more about yourself, like more about your, like what you like talking about, how you like talking about it, areas and places and people who you like talking to with. And it's amazing to hear you say that you're kind of like going all in on content now, that you've seen a type of benefit, because I talked to a lot of people about this. I mean, obviously like my bread and butter is like marketing. So like, you know, like there's the referring to social as like dark social, like, you know, it's driving benefit. It's just like, okay, well, I guess like my Google Analytics or Amplitude or whatever software you use to track your website performance and your lead funnel would never say that all these things are driving impact. And I think it's like we stare at brands that are doing social really well and you're like, oh, how do they do it? And it's like, yeah, because they have pulled their finger out and they're just like getting after it. You know what I mean? And it's very cool for me to hear you say that, like that you're going all in on like sort of content, because you know that it is a tangible brand impact. Like you mentioned, like other franchisees, like texting you like a tweet and it's like, this is why I joined this business. Like I fucking love that. Like it's in like, that's like the social proof that you dream of. You know what I mean? Like you take a screenshot of that text, you take a screenshot of that Slack or whatever tool you use, post it on Twitter, and you like blur out the person's name and you go, this is why I do it. And other people are like, yeah, that's an amazing tweet. Like there's nothing better than that. Like people, and it's simple and it's raw and it's authentic. You know what I mean? And it's like, I honestly constantly try to figure out like how to explain it better to people, you know, and you got it down, you know? Yeah.
And it compounds. That's the other piece. Like it is, like we don't have drip campaigns. I mean, we do, but like it's not relevant. My drip campaign is my social media feeds. Like that's it. So if someone's like, hey, this isn't right for me, or I'm buying another business, like no big deal. Follow along. Like I'll launch other brands in the future. Like we'll, you know, maybe there will be another opportunity, but in the meantime, we get to continue to have a relationship with each other.
Totally. I mean, that's the thing. And it's such a door opener. Sure. Like, I mean, I reached out to you on Twitter. Like I literally saw you and I DM'd you and I was like, come on my podcast. And
I got someone else yesterday. I mean, it's crazy. Like we're going all in on it. I have video in-house now.
Yeah.
He goes with me to every single conference I speak at. Like I'm building a podcast studio in my basement right now, which will be a content room. I mean, like we're going all in.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I am the first person I ever pulled online. That's not a good Irish phrase. I'll tell you that much. But the first person I pulled online was like a gentleman in Miami who's a commercial real estate broker of hospitality. And I just was stopped in my path, like on a reel he posted, and that was like Restaurant Armageddon in Miami. And I was like, oh, hello, what is this little piece of content?
Right.
And I DM'd him, got him on the pod. Absolute gent, Felix Bendersky is his name. And I think about that engagement a lot because like he was telling me that like he has a whole content marketing social media team to produce the content for him. And the way I think about that is like, and the way you're saying it, like, if somebody was listening to us having this chat and they go, oh, you guys have got content marketing teams now. You guys have got production teams. Right. I'm like, write the tweet, man. You know, like write the LinkedIn post. When you're walking your dog, take that selfie video and just talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the 0 to 1 is the initiative and the 1 to 9 is the production. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, it's like when you go to the gym, you squat for the first time in like a year and you're like, I think my hamstrings are going to like rip off my bone, you know? And it's like, you got to go back again 2 days later, do those squats again and the rust will go away. Like, that's how I feel like posting on social is like, you know, putting yourself out there. But it's amazing to hear that you've gotten such value out of it that you're now like able to like go, okay, I'm going to take a guy who's going to record me at all these conferences, and we're going to create that content, repackage that content for all the different sort of distribution elements, and it's paying off.
Yeah,
which is amazing. I mean, you've had such a successful business. It blows my mind. I really like. It's not. Man, the numbers speak for themselves. It's like it's amazing.
Thank you.
It's amazing. And it speaks to like, I guess, you know, your experience in your leadership. You know, like I think like fundamentally, like you're not going anywhere without good leadership. And I mean, obviously, your 20-something staff obviously all look up to you, and you know, you obviously engender a great culture in the organization as well. I mean, the fact that you're able to come into like a 30-plus-year-old business, family business, and then ingratiate yourself to them and really like kind of earn their trust, so to speak, and then help them scale their sort of family businesses is like phenomenal. I guess, you know, when you think about like your own personal leadership style, like how do you think about it? I mean, it's always a funny question to ask, like what kind of leader do you think you are? But like how do you think about like your style of leadership, or how you think your style of leadership is?
So I think so I was basically, I mean, in September of 2022, I was a W-2 employee with one person underneath me, essentially. And, you know, here we are a year and a half later, and I now, you know, run 187 unit franchise system with 22 employees. Right. So I basically, in the last year and a half, but trial by fire, have had to learn how to be a CEO of a company.
Yeah.
And, I've also single-handedly walked every single franchisee who signed up across into this myself. So all of the development has been done by me.
Yeah.
And so I will say that because I've done all the development myself, I've had to hire and empower really good leaders to run their division of the company. Because out of necessity, I'm on the phone all day long. I'm not anymore. I've now hired a chief development officer, but up until 3 weeks ago, it's been me leading the charge on the franchise development efforts. So as a result, almost not necessarily by design, but out of necessity, as I've hired and paid people really well to come in and lead. And so I've empowered leaders to lead.
Yeah.
And so now the way I've got it set up is I've got 3 direct reports and an executive assistant, and that's it. And they run the company, and I provide the leadership necessary to help them block and tackle. But I have 3 direct reports and an executive assistant. Everyone else reports to them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and it's like you found what works for you. And you talked about building for scale earlier as well. You know, like you get to, I mean, like 300, 400, 500. Like when you think about like your leadership style and how it's going to evolve, you know, like there's like obviously a difference,
right?
You know, when you hit like that kind of level of scale, like you obviously having to hit it, but it must be something that like, does that keep you up at night knowing that like we're growing really quickly and I need to grow too?
Well, so what I've learned is that companies outgrow people.
Yeah.
And that when a company is growing at like, you know, L curve, you know, not every team member is able to also grow both personally and professionally at that same curve. So what I'm focused on doing now is building more or less like a C-suite over the next year, because I don't want to be in the weeds making the decisions of who's growing with the company the right way or not. I want to be able to zoom out and say, and look down and say, is there anything you need my help with? And if the answer is no, let me know. Like, and that's what I think everyone wants in a business, is to be able to get to that point where they've empowered and paid people, you know, well to run their business for them.
Yeah.
But in order to get to that next stage of growth of a 400 unit system with 400 trucks on the road.
Yep.
You can't do it without that, in my mind. I mean, unless you were to like, I don't think you can do it without that. But that takes a lot of like letting go and getting out of the way.
Totally.
Not a lot of entrepreneurs can do.
Yeah. Like, I mean, famously, you know, they're very controlling micromanagers, but I think at the same time, I was very lucky a few years ago to have an amazing boss, and she was very early at Facebook, and was the first employee at Quip, and a bunch of other, just an incredibly successful career. And she set up CZI for the Zuckerbergs, and she wrote an article, I'll send it to you, called "Giving Away Your Legos and Other Startup Commandments." And what resonates, and I mention this to a lot of people when it comes to talent, is like, especially for scaling organizations, like you're probably going to like, from scaling to like IPO, you're probably going to a liquidity event, you're probably going to keep like no more than 10% of the staff that were there with you at the beginning. It's just the nature of like scaling. But one of the things that's in that article that has always resonated with me is, giving away your Legos, meaning like, are you flexible enough to give up your job spec within the role that you're doing? So I hired you this year to be like our head of marketing, but I like you and I think you're really good. So I think we got a problem in our customer success. I need you to take over customer success. Oh, but I'm the marketing guy. I don't know anything about customers. Like, doesn't really matter. Like, are you flexible enough to go solve the problem our business needs today? Like, that's the kind of person you're looking for within a leadership role. And it's amazing that you're able to be articulate and humble enough to even admit that about the people that you're trying to hire for, and know that there are experts that you can hire to come in and help you scale this, because if they're a success, you're going to be a huge success.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's absolutely crucial. I've learned that like business is all about people. It's not how are we going to do this? It's who is going to do this.
Yeah.
And I think where a lot of entrepreneurs get in their own way is they say, I need to do it. I have to do it. And if I don't do it the right way, then it's not going to get done. And, and the problem is you can't build $100, $200 million company, you doing it all. Like, you just can't. And you have to hire people who are better at you than the thing that you're doing. And you have to continually replace yourself in a role in order for you to be able to A, have freedom and have a business that can run without you, but also B, empower other people to be the best versions of themselves. Totally. And when you ask a question about like, what's my leadership style, that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah. I'm trying to help franchisees and my team members be the best version of themselves.
Totally. And I mean, I think that's exactly it. Just like unlocking people's potential in those leadership roles, like as in, being humble enough to see that and being generous enough to give that, like it's a lot of responsibility, but like if somebody like, everyone's smart, you hire smart people that come in and they'll send your business to the next level. That's what you want them to do. And come on a bit of that journey with you, like that's the thing. I mean, all these companies are all a journey, and it's like, there'll be ups and downs, there'll be difficult times, good times. And you want people who are there that can thrive in all those scenarios and kind of like really kind of be the leader you need. Like, it's not like you're going to be a Napoleon of like power washing. You know what I mean? Like,
no.
Well, you do want to conquer, but like, I guess like with a team.
Yes. I definitely want to conquer. We definitely want to lead the industry. But if I'm in the weeds all day long doing all the things, there's no way the company will get to where it needs to go. And I think being understanding that now and being able to build systems that allow me to like not be everything is where the company needs to go to get to that next level.
Awesome. And I think like, it's a great little way to kind of like, great little sign off for us, I think, great little way. Like, I mean, honestly, man, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this podcast.
Likewise, thank you.
I'm so lucky that I found that the algorithm god sent you my way and that you're very responsive to my tweet. And we got here to discuss this. I think I had a great time learning, about responsible franchising with you, talking about social, talking about leadership. You're an absolute legend, and I appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you so much for having me.